screaming, bare feet hit the floor. He's off to the races, everybody out the door. I feel like I'm falling behind, it's a crazy life. 90 miles an hour, going fast as I can, trying to push a little harder, trying to get the upper hand. So much to do in so little time, it's a crazy life. It's ready, set, go, it's another wild day. When the stress is on the rise and in my heart I hear you say, just breathe, just breathe. Come and rest at my feet and be, just be. Chaos calls, but all you really need is to just breathe. Third cup of Joe just to get me through the day. Wanna make the most of time, but I feel it slip away. I wonder if there's something more to this crazy life. I'm busy, 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 and it's no surprise to see that I only have time for me, me, me. There's gotta be something more to this crazy life. I'm hanging on tight to another wild day. When the sun is on the rise and in my heart I hear you say, just breathe, come and rest at my feet and be, just be. Chaos calls, but all you really need is to take it in and fill your lungs with the peace of God that overcomes. Just breathe, just breathe. Let your weary spirit rest. Allow what's good and find what's best. Just breathe, just breathe, just breathe, just breathe. Come and rest at my feet and be, just be. Chaos calls, but all you really need is to just breathe. Just breathe. Beat.
I think all of our batteries are dead this morning. Well, it's good to see each and every one of you. If you would, let's go ahead and turn in our Bibles to 1 Timothy chapter 3. 1 Timothy chapter 3. As you're turning there, I'd like to do a quick recap because we're right at the end of a series. I don't know if I have one or two more, but we're getting to the end. And our series is We Are the Family of God. We are the family of God. We're looking at church membership. Some of the things that we've seen so far is, number one, church membership means working together. We figured out we have to be a functioning church. The second thing we learned is church membership means we should be unified. Church membership means we should be unified. Last week, we learned that church membership is not about our preferences. Sometimes we don't always get what we want. And today, the fourth sermon, church membership means praying for your church leaders. Church membership means praying for your church leaders. So the first thing we're going to ask is, who are our leaders? We have to define that. The first thing we have to look at is, who are our leaders. And that's what we're going to read. 1 Timothy chapter 3, and I'm going to read the first 13 verses. So if you would, let's all please stand for the reading of God's Word, because God's Word is inerrant, God's Word is infallible, and God's Word is inspired.
Amen.
Paul writes, this saying is trustworthy. If anyone aspires to be an overseer, he desires a noble work. An overseer, therefore, must be above reproach, the husband of one wife, self-controlled, sensible, respectable, hospitable, able to teach, not an excessive drinker, not a bully but gentle, not quarrelsome, not greedy. He must manage his own household competently and have his children under control with all dignity. If anyone does not know how to manage his own household, how will he take care of God's church? He must not be a new convert, or he might become conceited and incur the same condemnation as the devil. Furthermore, he must have a good reputation among outsiders, so that he does not fall into disgrace and the devil's trap. Deacons, likewise, should be worthy of respect, not hypocritical, not drinking a lot of wine, not greedy for money, holding the mystery of the faith with a clear conscience. They must also be tested first. If they prove blameless, then they can serve as deacons. Wives, likewise, should be worthy of respect, not slanderers, self-controlled, faithful in everything. Deacons are to be the husbands of one wife, managing their children and their own households competently. For those who have served well as deacons acquire a good standing for themselves and great boldness in the faith that is in Christ Jesus. At this time, I'm going to ask Brother Frank if you would open us up in prayer.
Well, we just thank you, God, for this opportunity that you've given us to be in your house today, God. And I just pray that you just allow us to open our hearts and our minds and our eyes to see just what you have for us in this message here today, God. I just thank you for your love for us and providing for all of our needs, with our sick and those that couldn't be here. And just be with Brother David now as he brings the word to us. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen, amen. So the first thing we're looking at is, who are our leaders? If you remember many moons ago, 6 months ago, the first 7 verses, what is a pastor, was my trial sermon. Because if you're going to vote on a pastor, you need to know what a pastor is, what a pastor does, what's to be expected of a pastor. But Paul not only says, do you have one office in the church, the pastor or the elders? He said, you have another office in the local church, another position of leadership, and that is your deacons. So there's 2 biblical offices in the Bible. Pastor / elder / overseer / presbyter. I mean, there's so many things that's linked to that word, but it means the spiritual overseer of the church, or overseers. Because he goes in Titus, Paul tells Titus to look over the elders, plural. You know, we're fixing to have a guy come in and work with our youth and children. Daniel, he's going to be a pastor. He's going to be ordained. You're going to have more than one pastor. You guys have had that before. And then he talks about deacons, the second office. These are very 2 different and distinct roles, although they're kind of combined here in 1 Timothy. You've seen how that works out. Pastors are the spiritual leaders of the church. Deacons lead in the physical needs of the church. So in the local church, we should have people tending to your spiritual and to your physical needs. And I'm not going to cover this. We're going to move kind of fast this morning. Acts chapter 6. I believe it's the first 15 verses. We're not going to turn there. But go back and read that, and you'll find out why the church has deacons. If you don't remember, I'll recall that for you. The apostles, the spiritual overseers of that time, they were covered up, and some of the congregation was being neglected. They just were. So they said, let's set aside these special men to tend to the needs of the people, their physical needs. Why? There was a special reason why. The apostles said, if we do that, if we get us some help, then we can spend more time in prayer and in study to lead this people Now, they are both important. But if the apostles, if the pastors take all their time spending to the physical needs of the church will diminish spiritually. Then it's no good. What good is it to feed the physical needs of the church and then they die and go to hell? You got to have both. God was very smart. He's like, I need men serving here, I need men serving here. They're both to be godly. You've seen the qualifications. They're both to be tested. They're both to be hold on. What's that term he uses? Well repute. I forget it. But anyway, they're to be found blameless. Meaning, not perfect, but they are to be tested, and they're to have good reputations, and they're to be godly men. So I wanted to take that quick. I wanted to take right quick because we have to define who the leaders of the church are. So the second question we have to ask if we're going to pray for leaders is, how should we treat our leaders? How should we treat our leaders? Hebrews 13:17. I've got 3 or 4 verses. I'm just going to have them up on the screen so you can follow along. Hebrews 13:17 says this: obey your leaders and submit to them, since they keep watch over your souls as those who will give an account, so that they can do this with joy and not with grief, for that would be unprofitable for you. Now, I'm going to be honest, these next few verses talk about pastors, but I think we can see how they can also apply to our deacons as well. We need to get behind the leaders of the church. Not blindly, because that can be dangerous. But basically, I want to say this. More times than not, we need to be more helpful than harmful. I can't put it any other way than it's listed right here. There's going to come a day where I am going to have to stand before God and give an account for not only me, my wife, my 4 children, but each and every one of you. And hopefully future members to come. That's the reason God said, be careful with your overseers. Treat them good so that they do this with joy and not grief. Now, Paul wasn't, no, I'm sorry, it's not Paul, it's Hebrews. The writer of Hebrews wasn't stupid. He knew that then and in the future, there were going to be church members who you can't very well lead with joy. I'm kind of young. I've already had a handful of those in my years. But God says, be smart, treat your overseers well, so that they do it with joy and grief, because if they do it with grief, it is not profitable for you. Church, you may have seen this, you may have not. I see it all the time. I can't give a lot of details, but we have at least monthly, if not 2 or 3 times a month, our association, all of us pastors get together. And church, I'm ashamed to say that there are a lot of pastors out there who hate being a pastor right now. They hate it. My last point is going to be some statistics. I know your job's hard, but so was mine. We all have hard jobs. 1 Thessalonians 5, verses 12 and 13 says this: now we ask you, brothers and sisters, to give recognition to those who labor among you and lead you in the Lord and admonish you, and to regard them very highly in love because of their work. And then after he tells the church to be good to your pastors, he says, be at peace among yourselves. Now, for the average reader, that might kind of blindside you there. But Paul is writing to the church at Thessalonica, and he's like, if you treat your pastors, your overseers well, you're going to have more peace among you. There's going to be divisiveness come. Even among your pastors, there's divisiveness. But we cannot let that break unity. I don't see eye to eye, and the deacons don't see eye to eye with every other deacon, but guess what? We work in unity. You give a little, take a little. You listen to those that are older and wiser. Be at peace among yourselves. I love that last line. But Paul writes there in 1 Thessalonians, we should give special recognition to those who are leaders in the local church. He says we should regard them highly. Why? I just read it, 1 Timothy 3:1, the very first verse I read this morning says, this is a trustworthy saying. If anyone aspires to be an overseer, he desires a noble work. You got other pastors may have shared this with you, but there's a saying in the ministry. The saying is this: if you can do any other thing other than pastor, do it. This is not a job for whims. This is not a job where you get to clock out at 5 p.m. This is not a job that's all roses, all good times. That's the reason the Bible encourages us as believers, excuse me, when one's in joy, we all enjoy. When one grieves, we all grieve. You know, as our congregation continues to grow, I'll be honest with you. I told Gina on the way here on the interstate, I'm like, it's cold, it's rainy, I hope we have a good turnout. And then look at the crowd that shows up. I mean, that's so encouraging to me. But as we continue to grow, think about it. You know, if there's 80 of us, I have 80 people to worry about every single day. 1 Timothy 5:17. It says, the elders who are good leaders are to be considered worthy of double honor, especially those who work hard at preaching and teaching. Of course, I just went over that pastor is another word for elder. We are to be considered worthy of double honor. Why? Because they work hard at preaching and teaching. Writing sermons and lessons and Bible studies and being a part of every meeting and doing this, it's not easy work. This isn't in my notes, but I remember I was still in my undergrad, so I couldn't have been but about 25, 26. And it was my grandma's second or third cousin, so it's a lady I didn't even know hardly. And there was this little bitty church. When I say little bitty church, I mean it had like 3 half pews on each side. And they were looking for a pastor. And she called me. And, she said, da-da-da-da-da-da. And I remember one thing she said is, we pay really good. Looking back on it, they probably did pay good for that handful of people. But, the way they understood it, she said, we pay $25 per sermon. So the way they figured it is if you get up and preach for an hour, you're making $25 an hour. And back in the early 2000s, that was good money. But what they don't realize is the average sermon takes about 25 hours to write. So if you're really writing sermons for 40, 45 hours a week and this and this and then, and then they also said they don't like their pastor's wife to work outside the home. So they wanted me and Gina to live off about $75 a week. Anyway, the point of that being is they really didn't understand what a pastor really does Monday through Friday. They thought you got to Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night and talk for an hour, and that's all you did. And some people really do think that way. It boggles my mind. Okay, I wanted to cover some of those basics. So now we need to look at the characteristics of a good leader. The characteristics of a good leader. I wish I could take credit for writing this because it's so good, but I cannot. This is notes that I took in seminary from Sermon Delivery 1, Dr. Dwayne Miliani. But this was what Dr. Miliani said. These are some characteristics of a good leader. And I don't have those up here, but you can follow along. Number 1, a good leader has a God-given desire to shepherd. If I could do anything else, I would do it. I've never been happy doing anything else. I've managed fast food places. I've I've worked for funeral homes, doing body retrieval and things. I've done a lot of things, but I've never been happy, never been satisfied, never been fulfilled until I became a pastor. His great desire is to bring God the glory through his life and ministry. His gladness and fulfillment are found in his personal relationship with Jesus Christ. The hardest time in my ministry is when I didn't have a church. I remember my second church, we got a 1, 2, 3, and 4-year-old. And stupid me looked into daycare prices. Woo! That was the wrong thing to do. And me and Gina looked at the math and looked at our bills and were like, David, you could resign from the church and you could work full-time on your degree while the kids napped and did other things. And I remember my mentor, Dr. Chuck Lawless, I met with him monthly while I was in seminary. And he asked me one time, because if you're a preacher, you want to preach. And he said, David, what has God taught you during this season? Because I was struggling. And I said, Dr. Lawless, God has taught me that my identity is not wrapped up in being a pastor. My identity is wrapped up in being a Christian. And I didn't realize that. It was a breath of fresh air to take a step back and just commune with God one-on-one, have devotion time, not worry about sermon prep and this and that. So his gladness and fulfillment are found in his personal relationship with Jesus Christ. He joyfully submits himself to the authority of Christ and the Scriptures, and his desire to pastor grows as he matures spiritually. And boy, if that's not the truth. The older I get, the more years I get under my belt, I love pastoring even more. But he has a God-given desire to shepherd. Number 2, he has a dependence upon the Holy Spirit. He continually seeks the fullness and the fruit of the Holy Spirit in his life. He actively confesses sin and undergoes self-discipline. We all should do that. These are meant for pastors and leaders, but this is really a reflection for all of us. Because in my trial sermon, I said, 1 Timothy 3, 1 through 7 is about pastors, but really it should be all for qualification. None of us should be greedy. None of us should be a brawler, however he puts it. Number 3, he should have a vital Christian experience. He is committed to personal discipleship. He doesn't allow his zeal for Christ to become dull or cold. I've seen pastors there. He leads in public and private worship. He loves God's people and serves them well. Number 4, a leader of his home. He prioritizes his marriage and leads his wife in a Christ-like manner. He does not replace his parenting responsibilities with his local church responsibilities. That can become a very blurred line if we're not careful. Me and the church. I've never had a church like you guys that's loved on me so well. I remember one Wednesday night, it was storming and raining, and I took off this way and Gina took off that way, and I got here the next morning and several of the women stepped up and said, David, why don't you just start working from home on Wednesdays? That way you can ride with Gina and the kids, and you can be there in case something happens. And I'm like, you know what, that makes a lot of sense. But he doesn't replace parenting responsibilities with church responsibilities. So the church allowed me to have a little bit of balance there, which works very well. He leads his family in Bible instruction, prayer, and family worship. He spends quality time with his wife and children. He manages his finances well. He is a man of integrity, maintaining the same deportment in his home and at church. He's a continual learner. He continually enlarges his base of knowledge. He strives to mature and cultivate his mind, improving his ability to think. He maintains a self-disciplined spiritual walk. He makes study, prayer, and scripture memorization a priority. He works to improve his ability to communicate. And again, this is every single one of us, but especially pastors. He has a sincerity and earnestness in his life. He is a man of his word and means what he says. He is faithful to the Word of God. He practices what he teaches and preaches, avoiding hypocrisy. He cares for the people he feeds. He properly displays emotion and godly effectiveness, or godly affections. Number 7, he's a courageous leader. He fears God and not other men. He boldly proclaims the offense of the cross, and he presses towards repentance of sin as he communicates Scripture. Number 8, he's a humble shepherd. He resists pride and seeks humility. He practices self-denial. He resists any display of arrogance or self-promotion. He is not a self-seeker and puts away selfish ambition. He flees from the love of money and materialism. And the last one that Dr. Miliani gave, because I know this is a lot, but it's good. Number 9, he is a maintenance of physical health. And this is where I kind of tuned out in class. But in all seriousness, he gives attention to his physical health and actively exercises. He avoids overeating and obesity. Now this is one I wouldn't have thought about. He gives attention to his schedule and time off. And that's just not pastors, that's every single one of us, because in our culture, we are not taught how to rest. We just aren't. We're taught to do more. Bigger's better, right? But we all need to give attention to our schedule and time off. He heeds advice from others when he needs rest and recreation. And I've seen this when I was a young pastor. I've had this filed for several years. And it's a little poem called The Perfect Pastor. The Perfect Pastor. And the source is unknown. They don't know who wrote it. It says this: after hundreds of years, the perfect pastor has been found. He is the church leader who'll please everyone. He preaches exactly 20 minutes and sits down. He condemns sin but never steps on anybody's toes. He works from 8 in the morning to 10 at night, doing everything from preaching, sermons, to sweeping. He makes $400 a week, gives $100 a week to the church, drives a late model car, buys lots of books, wears fine clothes, and has a nice family. He always stands ready to contribute to every other good cause too. And he helps panhandlers who drop by the church on their way to somewhere else. He's 36 years old and has been preaching for 40 years. He is tall on the short side, heavy set on a thin sort of way, and very handsome. He has eyes of blue or brown to fit the occasion, and wears his hair parted in the middle, left on one side, dark and straight on the right side, and it's brown and wavy. He has a burning desire to work with the youth and spends all his time with senior citizens. He smiles all the time while keeping a straight face because he has a keen sense of humor that finds him seriously dedicated. He makes 15 calls a day on church members, spends all his time evangelizing non-church members, and is always found in his study if he is needed. Unfortunately, he burnt himself out and died at 32 years of age. It's a cute little poem. It makes fun here and there, but the gist of it is there is no such thing as the perfect pastor or deacon or church leader. We tend to think that. We look for, the title they're using nowadays is the silver bullet. Oh, if we could just get a young pastor with a family, our church will grow. We don't have to change. We can keep doing what we've been doing for 40 years, but if we could just get that one pastor, there is no silver bullet. If we're going to grow here at Oak Street, things are going to change. They're going to have to. And that's a good thing.
Amen.
Yeah. Even being young, you know, when I went to vacation Bible school, you know, I was 5, 6 years old, and we would sing those old songs like Onward Christian Soldier and da-da-da-da-da. Then I got my first church, and they did the Lifeway VBS, Aviation Wonders, and the New York one, Big Apple City,
Big Apple Adventure.
And man, they had some some songs that would make you tap your toe, and I started scratching my head. I'm like, I don't understand this. I don't know if I like this different type of music in the church. In my first church, Watauga Baptist, on a normal Sunday, we ran about 7, 8, 9, 10 kids. This church was known for Vacation Bible School. You know, and my older members would complain, well, all these people in the community wants a babysitter. I'm like, good. Bring them on. We'll tell them about Jesus. That week of Vacation Bible School at Watauga First Baptist would run over 100 kids. On Friday night, we would have dinner. We'd have to have like 4 or 5 shifts because the fellowship hall could only hold about 30 people. So if you've got 100 kids and their parents, we just had to take shifts and eating. That change of music and type of VBS was good. I didn't understand it. To be honest with you, at that point in my life, I really didn't like it. I was still very old school. But you know, when you see those little ones come in and they're excited about Jesus, and some of them make professions of faith that changes eternity, I can put my preferences and desires to the side.
Yeah.
The last thing I want to cover is some shocking statistics. Some shocking statistics. Listen to this. This is several years old. COVID, you might as well double and triple some of these numbers if possible. 1,500 pastors leave the ministry for good each month, citing burnout or contention in their churches. 80%, 8 out of every 10 pastors, and 84% of their wives are discouraged in their roles. 8 out of every 10. Almost half of all pastors have seriously considered leaving ministry for good in the last 3 months. Half. For every 20 pastors who go into ministry, let me pause. I don't ever do this. I'm going to throw this out there. Have a little bit of fun. For every 20 pastors that go into the ministry, guess how many you think actually retire from ministry? Out of 20. Anybody got a guess? 3, 4, 2, 1. 1. 5%. 1 out of 20. Church, I've only been out of seminary a handful of years. I can name a list of buddies who's already quit ministry. One's selling insurance. One's doing this. 50% of pastors say they are unable to meet the demands of their job and are so discouraged that they would leave the ministry if they could, but have no other way of making a living. There's not too many jobs that want somebody to come write sermons and preach to them outside of the pastoring. I'm ashamed to say this. I'm on some private Facebook pages. And you know what all these old men are telling new seminary guys? Get a trade. Get a trade behind your belt. It's not bad advice. The advice is bad because of what they mean. That you're going to leave. You've got to have a way of making money. And as we close, I wanted to list 10 reasons pastors have listed for leaving. I got this off a website. Number 1, discouragement. Number 2, failure. Number 3, loneliness. That kind of surprised me a little bit, but I'm extroverted. Number 4, moral failure. Number 5, financial pressure. Number 6, anger. Number 7, burnout. Number 8, physical health. Number 9, marriage or family problems. And number 10, they're too busy. They've lost their drive. I'll be honest, the one that hurts me the most is the marriage family problems. If you've ever sat around an old pastor that's retired or gonna retire, it never fails. I've been around a bunch of them. 9 out of 10, I would say, tell me this. David, if I had it to go back over to do again, you know the thing I would change? I'm like, what's that? I wouldn't have put the church before my family. You know what? Any pastor worth his weight in gold loves his church and loves his people and wants to do everything he can for them. He wants to see his church grow. He wants to be involved with the youth. He wants to be involved with kids. He wants to help, with the music and everything, with audiovisual. But most pastors put that stuff ahead of their family needs. I told this on a Wednesday night. I don't think I've shared it on a Sunday morning. God taught me this lesson a long time ago. I never make Gina look bad. I always make her look good, so this makes Gina look good. You know when the devil or his demons, when they attack a pastor most? Sunday morning. Do you know when my frustration level is at this height? Sunday morning, even now. Kids ain't ready, cats ain't fed, we gotta go. You dads know what I'm talking about. But we didn't even have kids. Had only been married a handful of years, and I was still like that. And I remember there were several Sunday mornings where I was like that. I was on edge, I was irritable, I was rush, which, by the way, I still do it, but I've learned it don't help. But I remember I did that like 3 or 4 Sundays in a row, and Gina wouldn't like it, and we would have words on the way to church, and we would get out of the vehicle, and I would go in, and guess what? I wasn't husband David anymore. I was Pastor David. I come in all cool, not frustrated, hugging necks, smiling ear to ear. And Gina noticed that for 2 or 3 weeks. So that next Sunday, we're getting out of the car. She said, hold on. She said, number 1, this isn't fair. And number 2, you are not going to treat me this way. You're not going to be this person in the car and another person in the church. A lot of wisdom in those words. And it helped a young 20-something-year-old pastor grow a little bit. So I hope that you guys see some of my frustrations on Sunday mornings. I hope that Miss Patty sees me aggravated when I come in during the week when something's going wrong with the kids or I've had a rough situation here and there. I had to learn that pastors are human. It's okay to be frustrated. But I can't be 2 different people. I can't be this guy up here on a pedestal and then barking like a lunatic fool on the way to church. Church, your pastor, and I'll speak for your deacons need your prayers. This is on being the family of God. This is on church membership. In every single case, I've seen churches hurt, divided, not doing well. Guess where Satan usually attacks? He attacks the leadership. Because if he can get the leaders, he'll get everybody. In church, I see some momentum. I see some excitement. I've been warning you now for over a month that we're fixing to have some spiritual warfare. Why? Because I see a church that's on fire for God, that's doing things for God, that is seeking God. And that's the church that Satan will attack. Not trying to scare you. I'm trying to prepare you as your pastor. We need to be prepared. We need to go back over Ephesians chapter 6 and put on that armor of God. We need to be looking ahead, having our mindset towards spiritual warfare because it's coming. We don't need to be blindsided. So church, this was a different sermon than I've ever preached here. I didn't go through the scriptures. I talked much more topically about pastors and deacons and leadership. But I think this is extremely important that we as a church pray for our leaders. We've got a deacons meeting tomorrow night. I didn't plan this to preach the day before a deacons meeting. I'd have preached it any Sunday. But pray for your deacons meeting today, tonight, and tomorrow. That number one, that we're unified as we start talking about different things. Even if we don't agree with each other, that we have a godly mindset going forward. And we all seek the well-being of Oak Street Baptist Church.
Yeah.
So church, pray for your pastor, pray for your deacons, and it just trickles down. Pray for the song leaders, pray for your choir, pray for your Sunday school leaders, pray for one another. I mean, that's the reason we have individualized Sunday school classes, right? We're like little pockets where we can better encourage and work with one another. It's hard to have a Sunday school of 80 people. You can't. Pray for your fellow Sunday school members. If you're not coming to Sunday school, come to Sunday school. Get encouraged. Get in there with other believers who are going through these hard times that you're going through. You're not the only one. Pray for your pastor. Pray for your deacons. Pray for one another. Pray, pray, pray. Let me close this in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, as we close this sermon today, Lord, let us seek, number one, to glorify you. Number two, don't let this sermon just roll off our backs, Father. Let this sermon penetrate our hearts. We need to pray for Oak Street Baptist Church. Lord, you have given us such encouragement. You've given us such opportunity right here. Father, let us not squander it. Let us seek what we can do to better share the gospel with others, Father. To better put on a better Easter egg hunt, Father. To better renovate our facilities, Father. To better work in our community of lost people. Whatever that may be, Father. Anything we do, we want you to get the glory. We want you to get the honor. For you are the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. For it's in the precious and holy name of Jesus we pray. Amen.
Stand and sing song number